All right, welcome back to the Justin Prince Show. Today's guest is a really unique story, a really powerful story. It's like one of those once you hear you can't unhear type stories. Nicholas Shakoour, was born and raised in Lebanon, came to the United States. Some of you that are fans of the TV show The Chosen, you've seen him on The Chosen as one of the kind of key actors there. And he had this incredible journey where he's transformed. He wrote a book called Transformer, and it's like awakening from a spiritual coma. And again, I think for all of us in our life, we probably need to come out of those comas where you just kind of get so focused on other things than the things that actually really matter in life. And Nick's book and his passion and his vibe will help you to really kind of awaken that in you. So I'm excited for you guys to meet Nicholas Shakoour and to hear and to feel of this incredible journey that he's been on to awaken his own, awaken from his own spiritual coma. Nicholas, let me ask you this. How did growing up in Beirut, how would you describe that environment? And then how did that shape, who you are and who you became?
There was a juxtaposition of many different aspects to it. So, on one aspect, because we were living under such, dire war-driven circumstances where, a bomb would go off in an undisclosed location and it might be right next to you, like the building right next to you, or gunfire would start because of the Civil War outbreaks that would just kind of periodically happen. And what that did in turn was allowed us as a family and as a community to band together more. So it caused this almost unintended banding of together of neighbors and friends and family, and it really gave us the sense that we were all in this together.
Mm.
And so it the way it affected me, I guess, was with me and my family, we banded tightly more together, and so that even impacted us when we immigrated here. It was always about, let's band together because that's how we're going to survive, and that was deeply ingrained in me since I was a child experiencing all that.
How old were you guys when you came over?
I was 6.5 years old, so we came in '86 when Reagan was president, and we initially came here for my aunt's funeral. So most of my mom's side of the family had immigrated to the States, and me, my mom, my sister, we were just traveling here to go to the funeral and then go back to Lebanon where my dad was. He wasn't allowed to travel with us because the company had no travel policies for entire families back then. There was a big exodus going on, so the country didn't want to lose everybody. So we came here, and the skill that my mom had since she was 11 years old, which was weaving and repairing Oriental rugs, was the very skill that got my aunt's boss at a rug repair shop to beg her to stay because they needed another, master rug weaver. So next thing we know, they get their lawyers to do our green card paperwork. It gets settled within months. And then a year later, my dad's able to join us. And my mom's 11-year-old, my mom's skill that she's had since she was 11 years old was responsible for allowing us to stay here.
Wow. And we were talking before we started. When I thought of Lebanon, I thought more of a Muslim country. And so explain kind of some of the dynamics of the country, from both politically and, religious dynamics.
Yeah, it's what I'd say it's a hodgepodge of everything and anything. So, just talking to my dad about the country and how things operated, last I heard, the latest I heard was that there's about 16, 17 factions that all rule the party, or will all rule the country at the same time. So there's about 16, 17 different parties.
And
So
when you say parties, would this be kind of political parties or more like, in essence, like tribes, in essence, like in other words, social groups?
I believe it's a mixture of social groups, but mostly political parties. So here we've got Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Independent, and either of them are ruling at once, at a time. Whereas what I heard from my dad was, well, in Lebanon, the reason conflicts happen is because multiple political parties are ruling all at the same time, which
Got
creates
it.
for some interesting conflict. And so it's mixed, man. It's mixed with Muslim. It's also I heard one of the only Arab nations that's also kind of predominantly Christian based. So there's churches and mosques, and I also believe synagogues. So It's a mixture. You got Israeli Jews, Lebanese Christians, Muslim Christians, not Muslim Christians, Lebanese Muslims, Armenians. I also heard the Indian and Filipino population has been growing there too. So it's almost like this tiny little port where all the international Middle Eastern European countries kind of come to meet and then disperse.
And you were raised Christian. You know, your grandfather was a Greek Orthodox Christian. But did you feel like you were, I don't know, active or involved in your faith at that kind of growing up?
My grandfather was amazing, man. You'd love him. So the man was spirit filled. He was absolutely amazing. As a kid, I always looked at him and I thought, wow, he is God. Like to me, he really represented Jesus Christ. So he baptized me as a baby. I, I sort of grown up at that point believing, meaning as a young kid, it was like that acceptance of Jesus Christ was already in my heart because of my grandfather, but it wasn't like I had a necessarily direct connection or relationship with God. It was all my grandfather as the example. So by default, I'm going to believe it too because he set such a good example.
Hmm.
But it wasn't later on in life where, you know, leading up to what would become the Holy Spirit encounter and that I would really start to have a direct, relationship with God. But before that, there would be a lot of questioning and then kind of falling out of faith before all that happened.
And when you got to the States, when you started your working career, because you did voiceover work today. Obviously, you're on The Chosen, and you've been on that TV show for years. So
Yeah.
what were you doing, let's say 18, 19, 20, 21, like as you started in your working career, what were you doing for a living?
Well, that's the thing, bro. I never, I never wanted to be a recognizable on-camera actor. I was going to San Francisco State, so I was studying cinema. I wanted to work in, directing music videos and maybe work in film here and there, and then, voice video games and so on. And that was kind of halfway through college. When I was 19, I kind of graduated high school a little bit later than most. I graduated when I was 19.
Hmm.
And that's because when we first immigrated here, I repeated the first grade and then I was held back in second grade. So those were 2 years that I was held back with. But again, look at how kind of the timeline of life works and why you're held back and why things happen the way they do. In hindsight, it's an easier pill to swallow than when you're currently experiencing an issue that seems challenging. So 19, 20, 21, I'm going to college with the intention of studying filmmaking, which I did. And that was my passion. And then later on, I started to kind of have this interest in voiceovers. There's a chapter in the book called Keeping It Real. And I'm at my buddy Chris's house with my friend Henrik, who's from Denmark. And he's been my buddy since college. And they started making me prank call that night. And I begrudgingly didn't want to do it because I didn't want to look uncool. And my buddy Henrik threw me under the bus saying, come on, man, like you did it at our house, do it. I was roommates with him at the time. So that led Chris to have a light bulb moment and say, dude, you should do voices for cartoons and video games. So I thought, yeah, I could do that. And something felt so right and centered about that. Next thing I know, I'm interning at a voiceover studio and I'm getting my feet wet in how to, audition and perform in front of a microphone, and just started booking video game work while I was in college, which was just super amazing.
And how would you describe, because we're going to get into your faith today and some of these really profound, spiritual moments that you've had that have really shaped the rest of your life. They've shaped, the creation of your book and so on. So how would you describe kind of your faith at, when you're 25 and, you just kind of as you're growing through those adult years, were you kind of active in your faith? Were you going to church? Were you, reading, in this case, reading the Bible, like praying? Like how would you describe your faith at that time of your life?
Well, when I was 25, it had been a year since I was graduating college. So, that goes directly to the chapter, which is called "Is This Love?" Big question mark. There was I was more wrapped up and wrapping my identity around a relationship that would eventually just turn into the most, unfortunately toxic relationship that I'd ever been in my life. And so instead of wrapping my identity around God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, I was busy wrapping my identity around what I thought was a life that I was building for myself
Yeah.
with this woman that I thought was going to marry. And of course, it wasn't meant to be. So, but but I kind of have fun and poke fun and have fun with it in a light-hearted, humorous way, because I think we need to bring comedy to everything we do. We can't take every single thing seriously.
Yeah.
Um, Up until we were teenagers, my mom would take us to this Lebanese Catholic church that was just like 7 minutes away from our house. And although we were brought up Greek Orthodox, that was more convenient and closer. So we went there, but I still didn't, like, I didn't know God. I just went because I just thought that that's like what you're supposed to do, like almost like you're in prison, like go put in your time, clock in,
Yeah.
clock out. And well, that's not a good way to have a relationship with God, I don't think.
Yeah.
Um,
Because I feel like that leads to. By the way, I think it's one of the things that gives your story so much kind of interesting credibility. Is you really weren't, eyeballs deep or neck deep into faith and religion and whatever. You
no,
lived
no.
a normal life, as it were, right?
Like I wasn't a terrible human being. Like I was like every other dude who's like, a friendly guy with people. And, I had my Nick ways and my Nick isms. And, I served tables at a restaurant called Left at Albuquerque with my buddy Henrik, and he helped get me the job. And I was busy flirting with customers, very wholesome with everything. But, it's like just a human college dude that, look, I did always say, I always feel like my grandfather left something on me, but I never knew back then what that something was.
Hmm.
And so I just went forward just being like, like be a decent human being to people. Like don't be a jerk as much as possible. And, even if people are mean to you, like try to be nice, although it's hard sometimes. But yeah, there was no like rooting my life in scripture per se. And I'll be honest, not that I do root my life in scripture these days, although I spent about 2 years reading the four gospels and a lot of the Bible during these encounters that were happening, just because I wanted to. It was like the opposite for me almost. It was like encounter happens. Oh, now I'm curious. Now I got to go read the Bible and double check references and see what's going on. But the one thing I didn't want to do, I knew, was that I didn't want to create an identity out of myself based on the Bible or based on any scripture, because I was reaching a breaking point leading up to the encounter. And I had zero trust left in humans at all.
Hmm.
And I know, although the
What
Bible
was
was
that breaking point? What was leading to that zero trust? Like, I want to kind of dive into some of the depression you were feeling. Like, what was leading to some of those emotions?
it was a cycle that started off, after my breakup. When I was the breakup, I lost my identity in the relationship by the time I was 24, but the breakup happened at the tail end of 26. And so then complete darkness took over, bro, to the point where people almost thought that I was doing drugs.
Hmm.
And me, I've never done drugs in my life. Like my family brought us up very strict when it came to that. It was no compromise. You do not touch drugs. You don't smoke anything. You don't use any mind altering substances. That was not like that's not my story because that's not what I did. But the what I describe in the book, the visceral reactions of the flesh that happened were so unexpected that it just led me down a path where I was just afraid to even wake up in the mornings. Like it was scary, bro, to wake up and know that I was alive. Like that's how bad it got for a year straight. And then what happened was, although the breakup was a catalyst, I don't credit it for everything, of course, but it was a series of what I call in the book, um, kind of living for my self enjoyment. I stated it,
Yeah.
where I stated how I just kind of dated left and right, lived for my own self enjoyment. I didn't think life had value anymore, and although I never thought of hurting myself, I did pray every night for God to take my soul as I was sleeping. And it was, and I know you're shaking your head. I was even shocked that
Wow.
I was reacting in this way. And in the book I talk about in that chapter, it's called Fallen. appropriately because I'd never fallen that much in my
Wow.
whole life. I had an amazing upbringing. Didn't have a perfect childhood. You know, there's things that happen as a kid where you get spanked or whatever, but other than that, like, uh, my parents are amazing. They did such an amazing job of being great parents and make sure I felt loved and protected and safe. They weren't perfect, but they were like superheroes because the book is all superhero themed. So
Yeah.
I gave them superpowers in it. But man, like it was, I was even wondering what is going on here. Like one minute I'm crying, the next minute I'm this guy that's going to the gym tearing it up. Then I come home and I just break down onto the bed and start weeping. Um, it was because I didn't know it, but the creating an identity through that relationship set me up then to where these endless cycles of betrayals would start repeating over
Hmm.
and over, whether it was friendships or relationships or or it was lack of opportunities in the world of getting a job. By then, the economic recession started happening, and so I talk in the book how there would literally be 300 applicants per restaurant that I would try and go and apply to because I worked as a photo editor at an extras casting office. I took pictures of movie extras. Excuse me, and so the hours started to get cut there, and I thought, man, I gotta start looking for a job. So here's what a day in the life of Nick stuck in that darkness would look like. It would be go get a job. Yes, I finally got a job delivering corporate lunch orders. Great. So I go and I do that, dude. And I'm pushing the cart on the street because the buildings are within blocks. So I
Hmm.
didn't really need a bike. It was like, here, just take the cart, four-wheeler. And I love people. So I, I didn't see anything wrong with working that job at all. Like I wanted to put something to use. And this all takes place after the chapter called Rashid Does Not Drink Protein. And just to quickly give you context, I was whisked off to the country of Jordan to be in a war torn film that I sort of accidentally got cast in and came back with PTSD. I'll
Wow.
just leave it at that because it's a lot to explain. So, PTSD, then the breakup fully sets in and everything just crashes. So, I'd be delivering a corporate lunch order, bro. And the next thing I know, I'd stop. This rush of sadness would overtake me and I would just start crying. And I remember leaving the cart and then going back for it and then taking it back to the store and just pushing it back in its place with all the lunch orders and then just driving home and laying in bed and crying, afraid of something that was coming to me,
Hmm.
towards me. So it's not a normal reaction for that kind of a situation, but I think the combination of dating around and not living up to the standards I think that my family raised me to. And look, like compared to a lot of my buddies, it was very mild what I was doing. It
Yeah.
was not, but still to my family standards, something felt off. And so that sent me into more of a depression. And and it was like this permanent curse was placed on me as far as lack of financial success and relationships. And so there was almost no reason to exist is what
Hmm.
it felt like, although I was never suicidal, but there was a lot of that haunting me, and it's like, oh man, I woke up again. Like I was so disappointed that I was waking up.
Yeah, I think part of what's so interesting though is it feels like it was particularly looking back. So Steve Jobs, in his famous commencement speech at Stanford, he said that we can't connect the dots of our life looking forward. We can only connect the dots of our life looking back.
Oh wow.
And as you look back on that time now, it was almost preparatory for you know the shift and the changes in the way that God was going to like work in your life. And it created even more contrast, right? It's like you weren't at neutral, you were like below zero in
Below
your
empty, bro. The fuel
below
was
it.
like
Yeah.
puffing up fumes from like
Yeah.
years and years.
Yes. So it created even more contrast. And I like to remind people that contrast is a great teacher.
Mm.
Martin Luther King says, stars shine brightest in the darkest nights. If it's a dark night and you choose to shine, then you'll really stand out. It creates contrast. But because if all the stars shine bright and you choose to shine bright, you'll blend in. But if it's a dark night and you choose to shine bright, you'll stand out. So contrast is actually your best friend. So in those really tough moments, that's actually when you can create, those that is your moment. Like this is your moment to shine. And I think as we get into what happened with you, it became this like life-changing thing that took you from, again, below zero, like low, like, out of gas, to like an incredible, a deep connection in your faith. And so walk us into that encounter. You've been working on The Chosen as Zebedee. So you were James and John's dad, right? You're a fisherman, James and John dad. And your experience didn't happen on the show, but you've been in that environment for a number of years. Walk us into what happened and kind of how that shifted your life since.
For sure. So this is halfway through season 3, right? So, and it's called, this one is called, which chapters? It's in chapter Getting Warmer. This is when all the, what I thought weird and funky stuff started to happen with visions and all these different things. So I come back halfway through season 3, take a hiatus, 1 month long, come back from California to Texas. And I'm walking around the apartment that they got me set in, and what I describe in the book as a gilded cage and a green pasture road literally project themselves onto the ceiling of the apartment, right over my shoulders, after this internal eruption happens. Because now we're at the point where the race to the finish is pretty much there, as in I could literally sense the darkness and the light racing to the end. Basically, who's going to grab my soul at this point? Like that was the race to the finish that was, and I could, and like you're saying, go back, connect the dots. I could sense it. Like there's something off. And then I hear a fatherly voice after staring at it, and asking, am I supposed to pick one? It was weird, bro. Like they weren't going away. And although I have a vivid imagination, I talk about how this wasn't something I was imagining. I just got unpacking my suitcases. I ain't trying to imagine a gilded cage and a green pasture road. Like I'm exhausted from the airplane ride. And so it appears, and they haunt me. And then I hear a fatherly voice say, you will have whichever one you pick and everything that goes along with it. And so up until this point, I haven't even started reading the Bible. And so I'm like, this is weird. And it was golden gilded cage. I had emeralds and rubies all over it with a gigantic key slotted through the door. And these sinister crowds that were like dark silhouettes of people applauding. And this cage was put on a pedestal. And I kept staring at it, and I just became so disgusted with it and with myself for potentially even wanting it. And right then and then, a gigantic hammer appears, crushes the gilded cage. It rots away, and it's so vivid, man. And I kind of, to be honest, sort of regretted doing that. And I thought, what did I just do? Like everything that I ever wanted. And when I tell you, man, if I picked it and I would have gotten exactly everything that it offered, I'm telling you 100%, I believe that I would have to this day if I had chosen that. So I turned to the green pasture road, which has, a white dirt road leading to the horizon. But the grass was like, it was sort of perfect. It was yellowing a little bit, but the sun was amazing, and the sky, everything felt calm and peaceful. And then I begrudgingly said, fine, I'll take this one. And then it zoomed out and it disappeared. And that's when all the weird stuff started happening, as far as I started finding myself making friends with Texas locals. And it kind of started on set with the construction workers. I'd head set on my days off, join the crew for the lunch buffet, and then I'd hop off the transport van to go watch them film an episode of The Chosen. And I'd be stopped abruptly while I'm on the dirt road. And I'd almost be pointed towards the director of the construction crew that were still working on some touch-ups and things like that at the workstations. I'd look back at set, okay, I'm going to go to set, and it's like, no, me nudge back towards them. And then I think to myself, why am I being nudged towards them? They look like some rough dudes that I wouldn't typically hang out with. Um, and what was really bizarre at the time, yeah, it was hot Texas sun, but it wasn't that. I could see these transparent waves of silhouette around the heads and their shoulders and their bodies. And it was like, I almost had to do a double take. What is that? I was like, should I go to set? Should I go there? Said, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to go there. So I walk over, introduce myself to one of the leads that I met before the hiatus. His name is Seth. He was the one who invited me to the church conference. So I reintroduced myself. Hey, I'm Nick. And I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea why I'm reintroducing myself to you. I don't even know why I want to hang out with you guys. I don't hang out with construction crew. It's not like, so what ends up happening is, there's a lot of other fun banter that goes on in that chapter, but I won't, elongate on the details, but he ends up inviting me to the church conference. And on my drive that day, on that Friday to the church conference, I want to stop by Set and join them for lunch. And I describe it as venom in my book. And I start to feel something crawling up my legs as I'm driving in the Midlothian mountains or hills. And I thought, what's going on? And I felt this thing incrementally go further up. And I could almost see it as like this black, elongated, what I call this darkness, this dark being that felt like, okay, I won't say felt. It wasn't a feeling. I sensed it. Like it was as real as, like imagine somebody crawling up your legs. That's creepy. So it was as real and tangible as that. And I sensed it was this kind of like just death, like death, no life, and the worst than fire and brimstone. I'll say that. Like way worse, like a place you don't want to be engulfed in. And it wasn't funny. It wasn't a joke. And I thought, first thing I thought, this is not happening to me. Because I hear about stuff like that. This is not happening to me. This is not happening to me. I start kicking my leg, trying to get it off like it's a dog biting my ankle. And bro, it just keeps growing. Another one appears to my right and audibly says, don't you dare admit what you're about to admit to God. Something in me called out and said, admit to God what you've been denying for years and you've been afraid to admit. Admit it now or this is going to get worse. And I froze. My body just froze up and I'm just got almost like cold sweat pouring down my body from all the, like, I can't believe it, man. Like straight up this, I don't know, you want to call it a lost soul, you want to call it whatever, a demon, whatever it is, crawling up, and right when it was about to swallow me alive. And I could feel myself being sucked into this, what I call eternity of just darkness and death. But you're experiencing for all eternity. Like, you wish hell was fire and brimstone and somebody poking you with a pitchfork. Like, you would take that over this. Like, trust me. And then I screamed out, God, my soul is lost. And I just burst into tears because I didn't feel like I had a place left on planet Earth. Every corner and every avenue, whether it was relationships or a career or whatever, it seemed like I never fit in anywhere. So if I didn't have a place, then where did I belong? So I screamed out, God, my soul is lost. The dark beam bursts off my body. The one next to me screams and bursts. And I show up to the church conference completely disarmed and just like somebody hit me in the face with a baseball bat.
Wow.
And that's what led to the church conference. And of course, amazing things ensued there.
Yeah. Walk us through what what you call this very first encounter.
Oh yeah, it was wild, bro. So, so I walk in. First thing my buddy Seth says was, "Oh, you got to meet Papa James," and he runs off. And I'm like, "Who is Papa James?" And then I'm introduced to Seth's brother-in-law, their families, wife, all the kids, everybody, the whole deal. They're saving the seats. This gentleman named James Orth comes up to me with a big white beard, and he's wearing a button-up shirt. And in the book, I call him Papa Smurf because to me he looked like Papa Smurf because my background is cartoons, and I think in animated terms. And so they're like, "Oh, this is Papa James." I'm like, "Hi." He didn't even introduce himself. He came up to me, left Seth like in the dust, and came and picked me out from a crowd of like 2,000 people. And he kind of backstepped a little bit and he looked at me and he said, "You're sick of where you've been living." I said, "What?" And at the time I was going through extreme depression post lockdowns that were happening in California.
Yeah.
It's just locked down for a long time. And I think that's what kind of finally broke me. And so I thought, what? And he said, you've been sick of where you're living because you want to go deep with people. And the only thing you're getting in where you're living is little droplets of water. And he said, but tonight the floodgates are going to open and tonight you are going to meet God. And then he left.
Hmm.
And I thought, what was that? So Seth was like, that's Papa James. And the guy could really see. He was speaking to my soul. He wasn't even speaking to me. And a lot of things happened that night. One of the major things that started to knock me off my peg was Seth's son, who came up to me after I put my head down and decided to stop judging this free-flowing environment. Because I'd never been to a church like this with, worship music and big screens and people, flailing around like, ballerinas, like we're at Woodstock. And I put my head down and I saw an image of my entire family covered in this gray darkness, as well as myself. And I'd never seen that before. And in that moment, from deep within me, I describe it as asking God to remove this burden that's been on my family and myself, and that I don't want it anymore. And I don't even know why it's on me. And Seth's son comes up to me, interrupts my little quiet time. I open my eyes, look at him, and he leans in and says, I was praying for you from back there. And I want to let you know that God told me to tell you by deciding to show up tonight, you've broken your family's generational curse.
Jeez.
Yeah, all I could do was just break down, and he hugged me. And I thought, what is happening at this place right now? And then later on in the night, Pastor gets on stage, who I call Pastor Steven Tyler because she reminded me a lot of the band Aerosmith. And she was screaming all the sermons for 2.5 hours straight. And she had everybody do something called burying your idols. And I'd never heard of that term. And she'd get on your knee, put a hand on the floor, and give to God everything that you've put above him. And, I'm standing there smug thinking, well, I don't have any idols. And then I hear the fatherly voice come and say, yeah, you do. Your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brother-in-law, your sister's fiance, your voiceovers, your acting, your da-da-da-da-da-da, your car, your Jeep, blah, 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 blah. And I'm last on your list. You've put all these things before me. And dude, when I say it hurt hearing that, it really hurt hearing that. And I thought, wow, I've really put God last. Like, he really isn't in my life first. And so I got down. I genuinely buried everything to him. But because I was in such an extreme situation in my life at that point and like I said earlier, I didn't feel like I had a place to belong to on this earth, because it seemed like everywhere I went in every group that I tried to belong with, there was this, no, like, you don't fit in with us, and we're going to kind of make it known that you don't.
Yeah.
So I grew tired after, 20 years of experiencing that. So that night I buried my idols, but with the intention of, I wanted God to physically remove me from the planet. Like, I wanted him to take me, not, take my soul or kill me, but it's like, no, I literally want to just be with you. It was that desperate of a situation, because I didn't know where else I would go after the conference was over. It was at a turning point in my life. It's like, okay, when this is done, I go back to California, and the state hasn't exactly been kind to me as far as relationships go. What am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I open my eyes, the conference is over, people are being ushered out. And I thought, whoa, how long was I out? Next thing I know, James Orth, Papa James, rounds the corner with anointing oil, anoints my forehead, my palms, puts his hands over me, and he starts praying in this indistinguishable language, which they call speaking in tongues. And the minute he started doing that, I felt like I was in the best massage chair of my life. All my cells of my body started vibrating. And it wouldn't stop. And it was like somebody trapped me inside of a Jell-O mold, and I couldn't move anymore. My brain came in and said, get out of here, dude. This is a cult. Like, leave right now. Dude, it was scary. And I tried to run out, and my feet were frozen. I couldn't run out of the place. And I thought, what are they doing? And then Seth, his brother-in-law, their families gang up on me without warning, place their hands all over me, and they start praying in tongues. And at that point, my whole body is just like shaking from the inside. And externally, I'm starting to sense this otherworldly love start to show its presence. But it's a kind of love it's nothing like human love.
Hmm.
It felt so overwhelming that it could kill you. That's how powerful this loving force was. And it got to the point where it all climaxed into my seeing the presence of God, Holy Spirit, just expand outward, like almost like a transparent force field, and tower about 7 stories high, which was the convention center, like that big. And I was just sucked into him. And that's when fire started at the bottom of my feet, went through to the top of my head. By the time it surpassed the top of my head, I experienced the sensation of passing away for 1 second. And that part was the scariest because I could literally feel my soul leaving my body almost, like the experience of dying. Then after that, prayers continue. I'm still in this transparent oceanic liquid bubble that God has around me. I felt like I drowned. And then when they remove their hands and the prayers were over, this bubble bursts, disappears. And all of a sudden, I'm looking around. Everywhere I look, I could sense his presence. I said, "What did you guys do?" And they said, "You received the Holy Spirit."
Mm.
I thought, wow. I was like, I feel great. I was like, is this why you guys are crazy about Jesus? And they said, yeah. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so that's kind of like it's I called that chapter radioactive love fire because that's what it was like experiencing me. You can't really put a name to it. He's I call it in the book all encompassing, all knowing, all everything. He's everything. He's everything, everything, everything. And you can't really put his presence or love into words because you kind of feel very inadequate when
Yeah.
he shows up.
Yeah, you can see why you named the book Transformer and then Awaking from a Spiritual Coma. And I think, that's a really dramatic, like just, man, it was just a dramatic journey. It's a dramatic experience. And I don't know if everybody has that dramatic of an experience, but I love that this idea of like awaking from a spiritual coma. It's like helping folks to really awaken the spiritual side of their soul. Like we have kind of this physical side, you have your emotional side, you have your mental side, maybe even a financial side, trying to provide for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But then awakening this spiritual side as well. So man, we said this when we started the conversation, we could go on for for hours, but just in the spirit of being respectful to your time here. So uh I want people to go get the book, but tell them what they can expect because I feel like you've written a really unique book. It's kind of written with this kind of like transformer superhero, like it's kind of a unique version of a spiritual journey. Uh, why go get the book, and how do you feel like it's going to impact someone as they go through this book for themselves and with their kids?
Yeah, so it wasn't originally going to be this theme. It was written originally in a very sappy, lovey-dovey way. The whole idea of superheroes came last minute after I went temporarily blind when I was washing my hands at the sink. And this whole cover of the book and the title subtitle just kind of... And I thought, what? Is this appropriate for what I wrote? This doesn't even match the inside of the book. So I contacted my cousin Caroline, who was she's an English teacher in Greece. I hired her on to catch sentence issues, structural issues, to kind of be my editor, to kind of put up the guardrails in case I go way off. And I text her saying, stop editing the book. I got to gut the whole thing. She said, what? I'm coming in 2.5 weeks? I said, yeah, I know. I'm going to redo the whole book. It's superheroes. I've got to give people that are poured into my life superpowers. And it's got to be snappy, sarcastic, funny, and witty, but also heartfelt and loving and way more spiritual to really encapsulate, like, because you said earlier, like, why should people go get it? If you want to feel like you're sitting right alongside me, riding through this adventure, it is a ride. And the way I created it and was inspired to format it, there are side commentaries added to the body text of what I was thinking as I was proofreading the book as well. So commenting on like, man, Nick, you shouldn't have done that. And then it goes into the body text. And then after that, there's a big bold paragraph explaining a new kind of idea and a new scene. So the book is not really something to be read, it's something to be experienced. And that's the intention of which I wrote it. Because I knew very early on that if people didn't feel like they were experiencing their own autobiography as they read this, then there was no point in writing it.
Hmm.
Because I didn't want this to be a, I am an actor, look at me, autobiography. Like it's, this is not that. This is, this is something different. So that's the intention that I came at it with. And then anything else that they get out of it, of course, that's always up to God. That's not up to me to dictate what somebody gets out of the book. But I do know that I was strongly led to write it because I was excited to share the experience, but share it in a way where people were along for the ride. And I made it 14-point font, so it's fairly easy to, it's big writing. It's very
Yeah,
easy to read.
love it. Well, Nick, brother, we're gonna have to, get more connected here. You have just such a great energy and such a great
Oh, thank you, man. You do too.
like a great vibe. Just you just show up with so much passion and heart and really love in your heart. And we were connected by friends of ours, and I can see why. So loved having you on, brother. And we'll have to get together here real soon.
I agree. Thanks
Appreciate
for
you,
having me
bro.
on, man.